grab your popcorn and snacks, find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust, turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Hey, welcome. It's a kind of rainy Wednesday here in Sacramento, and I want to welcome everybody to the show. We got a great show lined up for you tonight. First off, I have sad news as far as my team goes, my paranormal team. I've had my paranormal team since, about 20 years ago, and people come and go on this team on a regular basis because that's just what it is, but there's always a handful of people that stick around, and I've had a real good core. One of my core passed away today of cancer, and I just found out about 5 minutes before showtime that she passed away, and everyone on this team is hurting right now, but we hope she has a safe passage to the other side, and miss you terribly. And I know she's still around. I mean, that's why I do ghost hunting, so she's probably hanging around right now because she's never seen me do the show before, so she's probably in here with me for all I know. But Trina, I hope you have a safe passage. Anyhow, back to business. As they say, the show must go on. So welcome, everybody. This is our Wednesday show, and we got a great guest for you. I know I'm really interested in crystals and crystal healing and stuff like that. I carry a medicine bag when I'm out in the field doing ghost investigations. And I'm eager to see what this gentleman has to say. His name is Nicholas Pearson, and he'll be with us for the next hour or so. My name is Charlotte. I will be your host for the next hour or so. I am the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team at www.californiahaunts.org. And you can visit our radio show at www.californiahauntsradio.com, or there's a mouthful between the two, right? Welcome. And my team is 45 strong up and down the state of California. We're in Oregon, Washington, Nevada, and Hawaii. We have members. So I'm real proud of that. Anyway, without further ado, let's get our guest going here and get our show started. Hello, sir.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm really excited to have you.
Thank you. I think we're going to have a great talk tonight.
All right. So tell me a little bit about yourself, sir.
So I started with rocks really young. I've been a lover of all things geological since I was a little kid. I was that kid who picked up rocks everywhere I went, exotic places like the seashore, trips to the mountain on a family vacation, the parking lot outside the grocery store, just anywhere at all. If a rock spoke to me, I had to have it. And at the ripe old age of 8, my grandfather gave me my very first specimen of quartz, this one, which is still nearby today. And suddenly this inert part of the landscape was transformed into something so much more magical and mysterious. I mean, as a small person, how can you not look at a crystal and go, oh my gosh, this is pure magic? And it's just been a profound love ever since. I've been teaching workshops on crystals for almost 18 years now. It'll be 18 years this coming spring. I have a background in mineral science. I got to work in the science field for Earth Science Museum at my university while pursuing a degree in music. And I published my first book about 5 years ago now. It'll be 5 years next month. And it's been a wild ride ever since.
Fascinating. And your first book, of course, was on crystals. I saw that. I read a little bit of it. What do you find so fascinating about about crystals?
The mineral kingdom is, it's the beginning of all things, isn't it? It's the start of all that is. So, if we take a look at the world around us, even here I am sitting in my office, if you were to subtract the minerals and rocks from my collection from this room, I would still be surrounded by things that are derived from the geosphere, from the part of the earth where rocks and minerals are born, the petroleum products that are used to make the carpet, the potassium-rich feldspars used to make the glass in my window, the ore minerals that have been refined to produce copper wiring to deliver electricity, the rare earth elements in all of my devices, the gypsum in the drywall. I mean, there's rock and crystal and gem and stone all around us, sometimes just kind of, we'll say, transubstantiated, so we don't recognize it. But there's something so solid and reassuring. There's something really magical, a piece of the landscape that can endure so much longer than us. And I think this is the gist of it. This is why humankind has been so enchanted by rock and stone since the very beginning of time.
So what kind of things can those types of rocks do for us? I know like I said, I carry a medicine bag where I have 2 or 3 different types of stones in there, but a lot of people aren't aware of what these crystals can do for you.
I mean, for starters, we've got to kind of like take a look at what makes a crystal a crystal.
Okay.
Crystals have this really coherent, regular, rigid, repeating, symmetrical structure. And we know from the world of physics that the more regular a substance is, the more regular its energy field is going to be, the more predictable, the more assured, the more coherent or harmonious that energy is going to be. And as a living being, I'm anything but coherent on an electromagnetic scale. My energy field is in a constant state of flux, and it has to be, or I wouldn't be alive. But my liver produces a different kind of energy than my heart, than my fingernails, than my eyelids do, because they've all got different functions and different makeups, and they've got their own rhyme and rhythm to them. Whereas any piece of quartz you pick up from anywhere in the world is going to have the same kind of fundamental geometry, the same chemical composition, the same formative processes and structures are going to be present. And that kind of regularity, that kind of coherence that takes place physically and electromagnetically, when we bring it into our own electromagnetic field, begins to teach us to be a little bit more regular ourselves. It entrains us. It kind of helps us sync up with that. And modern studies, modern science, modern medicine is telling us that the more coherent the electromagnetic field, particularly if we look at like heart and brain coherence, then generally speaking, the higher our sense of well-being. I don't know if science can go so far as to say one causes the other outright, but they do acknowledge there's a really intimate relationship there. So imagine I take this quartz crystal, which is highly ordered, regular, coherent, and I bring it into my own energy field, which learns how to be more coherent. We know that will shift mood and perception. When we change those things, it affects our neurotransmitters, the chemical and electrical signals that cascade through the body. And we start to experience a state of peace or wellness, or maybe we'll just call it positive mental affect if we want to say what modern science and modern medicine uses to kind of qualify those things. But at the end of the day, there is something even above and beyond that maybe we can't measure with the electromagnetic scale just yet. I think one day we'll get there. There's something really magical taking place that we might not be able to graph or quantify, but the spirit of that stone, the energy, the consciousness, the spark of divinity within it is speaking to me on the same level where my own innate divinity, my own innate spiritual consciousness lies. And whatever partnership happens is where the magic comes from.
Is that like when somebody talks about their polarity being kind of knocked out of sync in their body?
It could be. I think people use science-sounding terms in very subjective ways in the metaphysical field because there's not really a good lexicon, a good language to describe a lot of the woo-woo experiences that we've got. So we pick the symbol set that works well for us.
Is that why a lot of people are into buying those Himalayan salt rocks now for their houses?
Definitely one of the things. I mean, salt has been esteemed as a protective and purifying agent for a very long time because of salt's hygroscopic nature. It like sucks water out of stuff, moisture out of things. We use it as a preservative in food and plenty of other things. And ancient humans would notice that we could cure meat or other things and it would last long. So by preserving this physical substance, maybe there's some sort of energetic preservation that goes on. So that's kind of the start of humankind's adoration of all things salt. But the Himalayan salt lamps can really uplift the energy in our space. There's some debate over whether or not they actually emit negatively charged ions. I think the science is still kind of fuzzy on that. But they do leave this warm, inviting energy to a space.
What do you think is one of the most healing crystals?
Any and all of them. I mean, everything that comes from the earth has its own medicine, but it boils down to what is the pattern we are looking to change. So, really kind of oversimplified example. Someone comes to me and says, hey, I really need a crystal for my throat chakra. What's the best crystal for my throat chakra? And I go, okay, well, what is the issue that we're having? Well, I want to communicate better. Okay, well, what's holding you back? Why aren't you communicating? And then it starts this game where you have to engage in self-reflection. Now, by virtue of their crystal structures, any mineral, any rock or gem is going to help us with things like reflection, help us kind of reveal the hidden, unseen world. But when we look at how the individual personalities of different rocks and stones kind of come together, some are better suited to certain areas of our lives than others. So, that person who wants the throat chakra stone might get around to thinking, and it's not really a communication at all. And maybe it's really got something to do with self-confidence. Maybe it's got something to do with, a pattern they learned early on about fearing speaking in public. So we might not go straight to the throat chakra. We might go straight to that stone that represents healing at whatever the root cause is going to be. So I don't think there's a universal, everyone benefits from the same crystal. I mean, we all can derive benefit, but it's like taking a multivitamin. When we specify exactly what we need according to the diet of our emotions, our lifestyle, the energies we partake in, then we're going to find the specific nutrition, the specific medicine in the form of the right rock or mineral that's going to support what we need on an individual level. That being said, something is better than nothing. Use the tools that you've got. It doesn't even have to be a fancy, expensive, precious gemstone. The rocks in your backyard are composed of probably microscopic, maybe macroscopic crystals, and they're going to have some sort of magic to them too.
That's interesting to me, because like I said, I use them primarily for protection, as far as my ghost hunting goes. I'm one of those people that'll go through and say, okay, this is for, this is for inner protection, outer protection, because there are uses, you know what I mean? So I've never really looked upon them as healing stones or anything like that.
Yeah, and I mean, even their protective qualities kind of boil down to this same kind of fundamental mechanism. An energy field with a high amplitude, like a loud volume, can't really be overpowered by things of lower amplitude or lower volume. So the more coherent a signal is, the farther that signal can be detected. In other words, the higher the amplitude of it. So by increasing our amplitude, increasing the volume of our energy field, then those things that go bump in the night, or whatever else might be the cause of our need for protection, it has less of an influence over us. And then, if we look at ancient lore, just about every gem, every rock, every crystal was used for protection at some point, because I would say that most cultures at some point valued these items as being somehow sacred or divine. And if I can hold a piece of something sacred, then that something sacred can be my antidote against the profane, against the dangers of the world.
And how did you learn about all this?
I started out real young, just kind of getting my hands on anything I could. I have a strong science background. My dad was a science guy, and we used to go to the library on weekends when other families were going to church. So, I mean, one week it might be something like, geology for kids, of course. And the next week it might be like folklore, or fairy tales, or mythology. And I started to notice a lot of correlations between science and world religion and world mythology, and noticed that it was just two, we'll say, symbol sets describing the same phenomena in the world around me. So I've always been really interested in the intersection between spirituality and science. But my high school years, especially, my rock collection grew and grew and grew. And I found in the literature on crystal healing a very unique kind of intersection between my love for science and spirituality. And a lot of crystal healing books get the science radically wrong, and that's okay. I took a lot away from them. But when I went away to college to study music, I was allegedly, by random assignment, given a chance to work in the Earth Science Museum, which is home to one of the largest mineral collections in the southeastern United States. And within a couple of weeks, they gave me virtually unrestricted access. I was a preparator and docent, and did a lot of fun things behind the scenes. And as long as what I did in those four walls was rooted in science, they didn't mind what I did with minerals outside of it, even going so far as to let me borrow things to take home and sit with and meditate. And from there, it's been a lot of just constant learning and experimentation and exploration. I've been working with students and clients for half my life now, so I've seen a lot of, we'll say, hands-on results in the field. And I'm a big why kind of guy. It's not good enough to read in a book that rose quartz is for love. I want to know why. Okay, it's pink. That doesn't seem satisfying. Let's go deeper. What can we reveal as we kind of peel the layers of the onion back? And so I find that a lot of crystal healing literature focus on like superficial things, the end results. What is the bottom line someone got out of this? And it ignores the deeper underlying mechanism that's at play. So if we don't look at the rest of the equation, then we apply the same stone to a different person's baggage or energy or life circumstances, and then we don't get the same result because the superficial stuff is all different in the situations. And I've always been really fascinated by what's happening under the surface, because if we can find out what the mechanism is, if I can find out what makes rose quartz unique or carnelian or citrine or any other stone, then I can anticipate what the end result will be if I apply the same mechanism to a different set of circumstances. And so that's really kind of the deeper work I feel called to do with stones.
Can they heal depression and panic attacks?
So, I mean, I'm certainly not a doctor and I can't make medical claims about this, but I can give an example from my own life. So
Sure.
at the age of 18, I was diagnosed with a generalized anxiety disorder. I've got some other things going on with my mental health, and gem therapy has been a big part of my wellness regime. And there are times when, I could certainly do with more than just a rock in my pocket. But what we get out of our relationship with crystals is proportional to what we put into it. So whatever our circumstance is, whether that's anxiety or whether that's just a string of bad luck or you woke up on the wrong side of the bed, if you mindlessly take a stone, tuck it into your pocket, wear it as a bracelet, go about your life and never pay any attention to it, you're not getting a lot out of that. It's like having a gym membership and you kind of like walk around the gym, but you never actually pick up the weights. So we have to enter into conscientious, intentional relationship with our crystals to really experience healing on any level. And that means meditating with them. It means getting to know their energy. It means getting to know your energy, because you've got to know where you begin and the crystal ends and vice versa. So there are a lot of different ways we can work with stones. There's not one right way. There's not one technique that supersedes all the others. But I think it's helpful to remember that we have to show up and do the work. It's not going to fix things on its own.
I was going to ask you, what are the steps when somebody requests a healing of you with the stones? What do you do?
I mean, these days, my focus is really things on like education. I want to work with you to help you find a practice that you're going to engage with on a daily basis, so that way you get something out of it. In a maybe post-pandemic world, when I am doing like live sessions with people, it starts with getting to know what's going on. As grounded as I am in all things scientific, I also want to be grounded in my approach with human beings and address them as whole people first and foremost. So kind of paint a picture of what's going on, then maybe strategize and talk. What stones are you drawn to? What have you been working with? What is or isn't working with you so far? Okay, well, I have some ideas on these stones over here. And then if we're going to do like a big laying on of stones, kind of like a crystal layout or crystal grid on or around the body, I'll have them lie down in a comfortable position and get to do that work. And although I've done all of that getting to know you part first, I'm still going to hold space for intuition to speak through. Sometimes the voice of stone is the most reasonable voice in the room, and I will acknowledge that. So I can go through all the things that feel, we'll say, a little prescriptive, but I want to enable the mystery to be the mystery. And so if we're there to work on your throat chakra, and it is malachite screaming to be on your solar plexus, that feels like the missing link, that's what we're going to do, because I recognize that I'm just the conduit. I'm just the hands and the feet for the rocks to get to where they need to be. But as wonderful as that one session is going to be, it's like going to the gym one time. So if I can have people learn to do something on their own, so they don't have to hire a personal trainer, me every time, for this analogy, and that's what I want to do. I want to show you little things, little meditative techniques, little ways that you can set your intention to really have a sense of agency in your everyday life, but also to bring you back to like, what is the task at hand, so we don't wander too far off so we can't get back to it later.
How do you figure out what rocks are going to be used for, or what rocks and crystals are to be used for what task when you're doing this?
So at this point in my practice, that looks a lot like getting to know my old friends. You know, you've got a circle of people in your community, and because you've known them so well, you know who's good for what. And maybe it's not necessarily what their formal background is in. You know, I went to school for music by trade, and I do very little with that. But there are other tools in my toolbox that I'm happy to pull out for people because I know and love them. Same is going to be true for your rocks. You know, I work with rhodonite quite a lot for things that are outside of rhodonite's everyday wheelhouse. So getting to know crystals on a personal level is definitely important. A good guidebook is going to be a helpful guide. And as far as like, how do humans, generally speaking, know what crystals do overall? That's an even deeper question. I mean, we have to look to things like tradition. We have to see how people have been working with stones for millennia. You know, if we take a look at something like carnelian, member of the agate or chalcedony family, there's a lot of lore about carnelian that stretches back several thousand years. So, you know, we have clues in all of that that might point to some bigger, deeper mechanism taking place under the surface. And then I also like to look at things like, what is it made out of? What are its ingredients? How is it formed? What is the crystal structure? What are their physical, optical, and chemical properties? Because even all of those have clues as to what's happening. So before ancient people knew what the chemical composition of carnelian was, they attributed it to the planet Mars, to the sign of Aries. They considered it to be hot and fiery. And we know about the stone today that it gets its color from trace amounts of iron oxide. And iron since very ancient times is a metal attributed to the planet Mars. So there's this Martian energy in its makeup. So there is this kind of sense of as above, so below. And I like to kind of bridge the old way with the new way and use science as that sort of mediating factor there. And there can be a whole lot of clues. And for anyone who's like really interested in trying to figure out what a crystal does to decode its makeup, its composition and structure and all of that, there's a really detailed synopsis of that in chapter 2 of Crystal Basics, which is my most recent book. Came out last year.
Cool. And what types of people come to you? I mean, I'm not trying to say, is it somebody that's depressed or you know, or is it just, you know, business people, or what types of clients do you get?
I work with everybody. Like I mentioned earlier, I focus a lot on education these days. So, you know, teaching seminars. Occasionally I have time in my schedule for some one-on-one coaching. And in my day job, I also manage a spiritual, metaphysical, occult bookstore. So, I mean, I see 100 people a day there. And that kind of interaction is obviously a different experience than one-on-one or classroom setting. But, you know, everybody. I get people who are brand new to crystals, who saw them on TikTok or Pinterest or, you know, Instagram and want to know more. And then I get people who've been working with crystals for a long time and I have reached a plateau or want to have a fresh take on things. And as far as like what their lifestyles look like, it can be anything from like physical wellness to mental affect and psychological well-being to, you know, doing the deeper spiritual work, which is where my great love is. Like, how can we use these as catalysts for internal alchemy? And I think if that's the work we're doing, everything else changes. As one of my teachers said, that you can't touch the body without also touching the soul, and vice versa. So if someone's coming to me for distress in one area of their life, if we work on that, it's a complex web. Everything is interrelated. So we shift everything if we do the work well enough.
Now, I've seen crystals that supposedly work for your kidneys. You know, in some of these shops, you know, and I'm just wondering if well, I mean, obviously it's not for it's a doctor thing, but does it help? You think it helps?
I think that we don't currently have a lot of rich, robust clinical data. So I don't want to make any claims that sound too medical there, but I can tell you from the annals of history, from tradition, something like jade. Jade actually gets its name from its relationship to the kidneys. And this is true in very, very different parts of the world. So, you know, to ancient China, what we call nephrite jade was a stone that was associated with the kidney meridian. And then the kidney meridian and the kidneys themselves are associated with Jing, or like our vital essence, our life force, our lifespan. And so apart from the physical organ of the kidney, the sort of metaphoric nature of it, they associate with jade. And in the other part of the world, in like Central and South America, when the conquistadors from Spain came into this part of the world, they saw that the natives would actually tie jade to their backs above their kidneys to alleviate pain there. And so they called it the stone of the flank, or piedra de rejada in Spanish, which eventually became pierre de jade in French, which became jade in English. So even that comes from flank, or where our kidneys are. And in Greek, nephrite comes from lapis nephriticus, or stone of the kidneys, in Greek. So both varieties of jade, jadeite and nephrite, are both named for their affinity with that. In modern gem therapy, in traditional Chinese medicine, in lots of ways, we see that this is a stone that's associated with that. So is this something that's got a lot of clinical data behind it? No. Would I love to see someone try to do something with that? For sure. There's a lot of issues with designing an experiment like that. And what little bit of experimental data is out there, I think, is promising. But it's really just sitting down and having that experience. And science will tell us that whether we call it the placebo effect, or whether it's the electromagnetics of the crystal, or something else that we can't measure, when we engage in spiritual practice, we tend to have a greater sense of well-being. For many people, that also translates to physical well-being. So I think there's definitely potential there.
Can you give me examples, without mentioning names, of people that you've worked with that have shown a real nice improvement after working with these things?
Yeah, so I would say the last several years, I've done a lot of work on the more emotional level rather than the physical, just because that seems to be what is attracted to me, and it's what I've done myself. A really great example of something that is a little bit more physiological oriented is broken bones after an accident, like speeding up the healing of a hairline fracture of the tibial spine faster than medical personnel thought should have been possible. And one of the primary tools for that was sodalite, especially this sort of gemmy indigo colored transparent sodalite has a special affinity with the skeletal system. That and a handful of other things are really helpful there. With anxiety and panic disorders, I do a lot of work with that, with things like rhodonite and lepidolite and citrine. Citrine's a stone I've been doing a lot of much deeper work. It's so common, but most of the citrine you see on the market isn't really citrine. So I have become so enamored with the good stuff, and getting the opportunity to help people work with that, and to see them weeks or months after learning these tools, learning these techniques, and to see them so much more at ease, to see them with shoulders relaxed and breathing regularly, and so much stress. You go, hey, how's school going, or how's job treating you? Oh, it's great. So these are ways that crystals have helped people that I've witnessed grow and change before me. And of course, it's the tip of the iceberg. And in almost 20 years of working with the public, I've seen a handful of really weird and miraculous things.
Yeah, getting back to your book, for somebody that's just starting out, and wants to get into this, is your book easy for beginners to understand?
So I wrote my most recent book, Crystal Basics, for all skill levels in mind. I really wanted it to be like a complete guide. So whether you are brand new or an old pro, everything you need is going to be within those pages. So it starts out with an overview of like, what is crystal energy? What is energy specifically? But broadly, what is crystal energy specifically? And how do we know what energy a crystal has? How do I figure that out on my own? What do I need to know about my own energy field to kind of start the whole process? And it gives you practical things like how to buy crystals, what to look for when you're getting them, how to store them, how to physically clean them, how to metaphysically clean them and program them and charge them and do all that fun stuff. And then it's got tons of hands-on techniques like making grids and crystal elixirs and layouts and meditations and other great things. And a directory of 200 of my favorite healing stones is also present in the book.
Does it matter if people polish them? You like use a rock polisher at all on them? Does it take away from their strength?
Does it take away from our strength to have our nails trimmed or our hair cut? It really doesn't. I think the important thing to remember is that what is responsible for the energy of any rock or mineral is its crystal structure, its chemical composition, and its formation process, and to a lesser extent, other things like hardness, how it interacts with light, even color. But those three big things are the primary drivers of its energy. So no amount of cutting, scraping, polishing, faceting, grinding the surface changes this internal arrangement of atoms, ions, and molecules that come together to produce the crystal lattice. So what shape can do is it can affect the way energy is distributed. Something that is perfectly round, like a sphere, kind of radiates energy softly in all directions. Something with a point on it is a lot more focused and directional. Other shapes might also produce slightly different effects, but it's the same fundamental energy if everything else is the same. If you have two optically pure, flawless, transparent pieces of quartz crystal, and one is polished into a tower and one is polished into a sphere, it's like listening to the same piece of music through two different sets of speakers. You might notice things differently. Well, there's a little variation, but it's still the same song. And that's what cutting or polishing our crystals is like. And in some cases, cutting or polishing can reveal things we wouldn't have been able to see otherwise, and might actually enhance the beauty of it, enhance our connection to the stone as a result.
Does it matter what size crystal you have?
Yes and no. So, the internet loves to tell you that it doesn't matter what size it is, because, we only might have certain things in access. But, the truth is that if we look at the physics of crystal energy, the bigger a rock or mineral is, the higher its amplitude. That's like how loud it's going to be. Now, louder is not better. Louder is just louder. So if you want to have a piece on your person, you might have a small one set in a pendant or in your pocket. And that's like being able to engage in conversation with someone who's right beside you in a whisper. But if you need someone down the street to hear you, got to shout. So there might be applications where you want to do bigger scale stuff. You might need more rock for that.
Okay. And again, let's go back. Can you tell me some of the different rocks and what they can be used for?
Oh, I mean, this is a fun game that we could do all day. So, I mentioned first example I used was rose quartz. So many times we want to reduce rose quartz to being the love stone. But what if I told you that like the deeper message, the deeper mechanism at play with working with rose quartz has very little to do with love at all? The primary effect of bringing good quality rose quartz into the energy field is to bring a sense of emotional fluency. So those stagnant emotional psychological patterns that we've got that are just kind of stuck and encrusted and stubborn, rose quartz allows them to return to a state of movement. Now, we might be able to express ourselves better as a result. We might be able to purge stale things so they're not taking up space in our emotional makeup. And what happens when we do that? We make room, and the universe can pour things back into us. So we experience that as an influx of divine or unconditional love coming in. But the rose quartz didn't bring the love. The rose quartz helped you make the space for that love to be there. The love was already there. You were a full vessel. Another really good stone that I think is underrated, although ever popular, is citrine, as I mentioned before. So citrine's a variety of quartz. It's usually kind of golden to yellow in color, but can range in color quite a fair amount in natural specimens. And we like to reduce it as a stone for abundance or wealth or prosperity, or maybe even we'll just say kind of success as a whole. But the first thing that citrine does when we bring it into our energy field is it starts to work on unwinding the tension that holds old patterns in place. So that might be physical tension, it might be psychological tension, it might be spiritual tension, and it strengthens the ability to let go at the same time. So we might say that it vitalizes or nourishes all processes of elimination. So, physically, I've worked with citrine for, conditions that are associated with like eliminatory organs, lungs, liver, kidneys, large intestine, skin. I mean, we've got a lot of different parts of the eliminatory system, but it's also our ability to eliminate the stuff we hold on to in other senses. Like, are you having trouble letting go of that thing that Cheryl said in the office last Wednesday? How dare she? Like, if you're playing that over and over your head, guess what? We gotta eliminate, we gotta let go. Are you a little bit of a pack rat? Do you hold on to clutter? Well, maybe citrine can help you learn to unwind the tension that holds the clutter in place and lets you release it. So as we do that, as we kind of smooth things out, one of the gifts that citrine gives us is it makes it easier to step forward, to move toward your highest potential, because you're unencumbered, unburdened by whatever stuff you've been holding on to. So the end result, which is different than the primary mechanism, is that citrine helps you fulfill your highest potential. Now, in an idealized setting, fulfilling your potential, of course, includes a financial well-being, but it's also going to include social well-being, emotional well-being, physical well-being, spiritual well-being. And so if we narrow down citrine's effects to just one component of our lives, we've limited all the other things it can also do for us. And that's the difference between like prescriptive crystal work, like I'm carrying this specific stone to achieve this particular goal and nothing else, and learning to view them as complex beings, just like we are. If I asked you to define yourself in a single word or phrase that described your entire life's journey and everything you hope to accomplish in the future, you're going to have to leave stuff out. So when we get really reductive with what crystals do, there's a challenge there. Crystal basics, I endeavored in most cases to describe crystals in the directory in 200 words or less. There are definitely some exceptions. And in my very first book, I did the opposite. I wrote about 7 stones, and it's like 120,000 words about 7 stones.
Wow.
So I go on some journeys to things they're related to, and I get to spotlight a few others. But the bulk of it is about just 7 things. Imagine 14 pages written about emerald. It's a lot deeper than 200 words or less. Right. So we have to remember that anytime we're reading a kind of memified version of what a crystal does, it is the tiniest fraction of its life story. So we want to get to know crystals on an individual and personal level, and we want our relationships with them to be open-ended, because maybe they see something we don't. Maybe when we bring that rose quartz into our life to feel more loved and be more loving, if we are open to whatever other mystery or healing rose quartz is going to provide, then maybe it'll bring well-being in other ways. Maybe it'll help us be a more sensitive communicator, because we can express our own emotions and hold space for other people who are doing the same, because that's a way that we have emotional fluency, emotional fluidity, so nothing is stagnant. Maybe we'll work with citrine primarily because we want to raise at work, but we'll also notice that we have more time in our schedule because we don't have it full of unnecessary things, and having more time gives us space for a side hustle, and there's another way that we fulfill our potential, increase our revenue streams. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and so it's really about looking at the bigger picture and not getting hung up on the tiny little prescriptive keywords that we usually see associated with crystals.
That's amazing. I never thought about that, with crystals, because like you say, when you go into a rock shop or you go into one of these mystic shops, they just have a little bit about what the particular crystal is used for. I mean, you made it just expand out.
Yeah, and like when you first meet someone, you start off with, "Hi, my name is Nicholas. It's nice to meet you." So, "Hi, this is a piece of carnelian. We might use this for creativity, or staying hopeful and filled with enthusiasm." But there's more to it than that. So there's nothing wrong with our vendors online or in person reducing things to a few words, but we as the consumers just need to be mindful of the fact that even if we're drawn to a crystal and those keywords mean nothing to us, it doesn't mean we are limited to just those keywords. Conversely, if we read the little tag and it says that it is absolutely 100% the things we are looking for, and we feel no resonance with that crystal at all, maybe it's because of all the other things that it also does, and maybe they don't overlap with your life path or your intentions well enough. So start with what excites you. Start with the crystals that you really feel some sort of attraction to, and then from there, see what the potential is with working with them. You might find a particular stone that is great for things that you didn't think it could be, because none of the book said so. And there could be a lot of factors, not least of all, your personal relationship.
Sure. Okay, cool. That's just really interesting to me. I'll have to get your book and read up on it in more detail. Than what I'm used to. Because like I said, I'm used to going into these shops and just saying whatever the basic info is on them, and then I'm happy to pack them in my little medicine bag, and then away I go my merry way. So this gives me a whole new perspective on it.
Well, excellent. I'm glad.
When somebody comes to you for help, or even even online, I mean, what do they usually say to you? I've got the depression going on, or something else is going on, or how do they approach you usually?
I mean, it all sorts of different ways. I would say my online presence, depending on what platform it is, Instagram tends to be people who want to go deeper with their practice. At least that's the, we'll say, flavor of experience people come to me for. If it's like TikTok, it's the complete opposite. It's like, hey, how do I cleanse crystals? I'm like, I made like 24 videos about that. You just got to scroll back on my timeline. Let me go tag you in one. And then the face-to-face in the retail setting, when I'm at my day job, you know, someone could cross a threshold specifically because they have a list of things they've already read about in my book or another one. And they just want to cross everything off the list and get everything. And others are just like, so I feel like I need protection, or my anxiety is really bad, or I'm having trouble focusing. What crystals are good for that? Or what can we do about it? You know, I always try to guide people to a place where they feel empowered to make decisions. So, you know, the face-to-face in the retail setting, it's not, oh, you have to get this crystal. It's like, I'm going to take you on a tour. I'm going to show you 3 of my favorites for this, and you get to know them. And you spend a few moments and you decide if any of those is right for you. Great. Maybe you'll fall in love with one. We'll talk about it. Maybe you won't fall in love with any. I'll show you a few others. So I always want to make people feel like they're not stuck with whatever I tell them, because even if I've written all the books, and even if I've been doing this, you know, I've been collecting for myself for almost 30 years now. I've been working with the general public for just shy of 20 years. So I've got a fair amount of experience, but I don't know you as well as you know you. I know me pretty well. I know my rocks really well. So if I tell you carnelian, you have to have carnelian right now. This is the only rock for you. And it's just in your gut, the one that isn't. I want you to feel empowered to make the right decision for you. And we also have to remember that when we're talking about spiritual experiences, when we're talking about personal things, everything is relative. So we just kind of have to have that framework. Just because someone said online X was the best crystal for Y condition doesn't mean that it's going to be the best one for you. And having the sensitivity, having the ability to do self-inventory and go, oh yeah, totally, this is where I'm at, or this is not where I'm at. That is really meaningful and helpful.
Okay, cool. Do people need to have multiple stones around them, or like you say, like you just said, this one stone's the best for you? I mean, can it be one stone, or does it have to be, a multiple?
I mean, as a collector, or maybe a hoarder, as the case might be, I can never have too many crystals in my collection. The truth is that I might have like tens of thousands in this house, but there are a handful that kind of are the staples of my everyday practice, things that I work with very regularly. And then I go through the boxes, or I set up for a class, or a session with someone, and I'm digging through and I'm finding things like, oh gosh, I haven't worked with eosphorite or wavelite or kenotite in so long. Let's get to know them again. So I think it is helpful to have a handful of things you know really well. Maybe even just 1 or 2 that you know really, really well, and then have options. If we want to engage with crystal healing in a wider format, if we're doing things for others, with others, or on behalf of others, the bigger your toolbox, the more situations you're going to be prepared for. But the truth is that a lot of fundamental human experiences are covered by a handful of stones. Because they're as complex and nuanced as we are, there are so many options for what to turn to. So start small. Don't feel like you got to buy one of everything. It's not possible anyway.
What's the best stone for karmic healing?
I actually devoted a whole book to working with crystals for transforming our karma. Short list of things that I think are like my everyday karmic healing stones: aquamarine, diamond if you've got it, and if not, skip on to the next one. Jade is often overlooked for its karmic healing. Good old-fashioned clear quartz, which comes in a lot of variations that can be associated with karmic healings. Certain kind of configurations or crystal structures can be better suited than others. I really love working with Preseli blue stone as well. It's a stone that I wear virtually every day, and I've got a piece here on my desk. This comes from the Preseli Hills in Wales. It's what the inner ring of Stonehenge is made out of, and also dozens of other stone circles and other stone monuments throughout the British Isles. It's a really deep ancestral and karmic healer. You couldn't go wrong with obsidian as well, but I think there's like maybe 55 or 65 different crystals for karmic healing in my book of the same title, Crystals for Karmic Healing. That was my second book, came out in 2017.
Okay. What do you, like you say, with somebody that's starting out in this, and they want to learn to do what what you do and what you've learned? How should they start out?
So for starters, pick up a rock. I think it is really, really helpful to do two things every time you get a new rock or mineral or specimen, we'll say. Learn what it is scientifically speaking, like learn what it's made out of, how it's formed. Even if that doesn't have a lot of meaning to you yet, look at those terms, familiarize with them, and then spend time with that crystal. Go to a place that's got good lighting and few distractions, as few as possible, and turn your crystal every which way in the light. Get to know how light moves through it. Feel the surfaces, as long as they're not sharp or fragile, so you don't injure yourself or the stone. Get a feel for it, the weight of it in your hand. Some are denser than others. Some crystals make sound, believe it or not. You can kind of hear them ringing. I wish I had an example closer to me, because I've got several just out of frame. But if you tap them the right way, they almost sound like little chimes or bells. So use all your senses that you can. Please don't lick your crystals unless you're a geologist and you know what kind of risk is involved. And really spend time oohing and awing over the physical properties while you're doing that. While the conscious mind is really engaged, something is happening with the subconscious mind. There's an energy exchange. You don't have to pay too much attention to that in the beginning, but you might start to notice, wow, every time I pick up smoky quartz, I feel this sense of calm and presence and anchoredness. I notice that every time I pick up amethyst, I get this kind of really intense buzzing in my head, or whatever it's going to be for you. And notice what's the same, notice what's different, because some of those things you're experiencing have nothing to do with the crystal and everything to you. And the crystal's just reflecting or revealing it to you. And so it's helpful to engage with this. And then over time, you can start to get kind of more, we'll say, pointed in what you're looking for and how you're engaging with the energy. But start with, like, who is this? Tell me who you are, where you come from, and all that fun stuff. And then as you get to know the ins and outs of what they look and feel like, you might start to notice trends. Labradorite and moonstone, they both have this flash to them, and those flashes appear in regular planes. And I notice that they both have similar compositions. They both belong to the same crystal group. Wow, there must be something that I'm seeing in one that is also present in the other. So even if we're not trained geologists, if we try to look with geologists' eyes, it makes us better consumers. It's harder to pull the wool over your eyes if you know that an ordinary rock is not worth the price tag attached to it sometimes. It also means that you can make better informed decisions. This is common amethyst from Madagascar. It's not a high-end kind of thing, so I don't need this high-end price. And it also helps, if we're buying from places that are not metaphysically inclined, if we come in talking about, like, crystal oversouls and karmic healing and, the angels that dwell within our rocks, then your average, like, rock hounder is probably going to look at you funny. But if we can go, hey, what's the provenance on this? Do you know how recently it was mined? Or is this from such and such place? Or, what is this inclusion here? Then we're going to have a totally different experience. And then we can do all the woo in our own time. There's nothing wrong with the woo. In fact, I actively encourage it, obviously, being in this space. But having a modicum of science helps us play nicely with others and also keeps us rooted. So I find that, and then just holding space for your crystals, to be really, really important.
How hard is it to find these crystals and rocks?
Depends on which one we're talking about. If we're talking about flawless, precious emeralds or rubies or sapphires, they are some of the most valuable and coveted things all over. Something like the feldspar group as a whole makes up about 40% of the Earth's crust. So you pick up a rock, there's a 40% chance it contains some feldspar. So that's something that's really abundant and common. Where I live here in Florida, we have more calcite than anything else. It's in the limestone underneath us. We have calcitized fossils. Occasionally you find beautiful calcite crystals in the karst topography. So how easy is it to find depends on where we live and also what rocks we're talking about. So some are super rare. Some are very common. Some common things can be really extraordinary if we have the right specimen. Like, the smoky quartz I keep holding up on the interior is optically clear. It was mined in the 1940s as part of material that was actually stockpiled by the U.S. government as an intelligence thing, because crystal radio sets at the time still relied upon natural quartz. So the more pure your quartz was, the higher the quality, the farther the signal went, the clearer it was. So they would keep warehouses full of this stuff to keep it from falling into enemy hands during World War II. So this is like a piece from that era that was mined at that time in Brazil. So something like that with that kind of history attached to it, and the size and clarity makes it more unusual than your average piece of quartz. So even though it's just common, humble quartz, there's something special there. So, rarity, availability, there are a lot of different factors that go into it. What's popular in the metaphysical market may not be what's popular and valuable in the non-metaphysical market too when it comes to rocks. So that's another reason that it's helpful to know a little bit of science, because if we go to our non-metaphysical vendors, we might have access to things that are just not available to us in our average occult bookstore.
Oh, see, I was just thinking about that because like these kids that go up to some of the gold mining towns, here in California, and they get the little gold pans. They allow them to gold mine, and when they go through that, and they're going and they're doing, they're doing the pan thing in the slough, they come up with little tiny pieces of jade and stuff, and that's why I was curious about how easy that stuff is to find. How easy that is to get.
I mean, California's geology is well known for the jade that it has, but if you found a piece of jade on a beach here in Florida, it either traveled a very, very, very long way, or somebody dropped it there. So, all things are kind of relative. Certain chemical elements and certain combinations of chemical elements are more abundant through the Earth's crust than others. Something like beryl is not extraordinarily rare, but beryl that has chromium in it is very hard to get. Chromium is responsible for turning emeralds green, emerald being a variety of beryl. So the beryllium in beryl and the chromium that makes beryl green and transforms it into emerald don't occur in the same geological environment, except for a handful of places on Mother Earth. Any other variety of beryl, save for one, is far more common. So it's a complicated thing to say how hard is something to find. There are things that are very easy to go and get. I mean, anyone who wants to visit Hot Springs, Arkansas can go dig for quartz, and I guarantee you will find quartz. Will it be spectacular museum quality? Maybe, maybe not, but you'll find quartz. If you want to, comb the beaches in the Pacific Northwest, you will probably come across things like obsidian and agate and maybe even jade. Maybe bits of opal too, if you're in the right place at the right time. But I would be hard pressed to find any of those things here in Florida because my geology is different here.
Sure. Is it medicinal for someone to go hang out in a cave?
I suppose it depends on the cave and the person. I certainly feel great after I've spent time in a cave, but biological factors notwithstanding, I can't imagine it being bad for your health. There is something really ancient and mystical about caves. And if we look at early lore attributed to them, the cave is almost always associated with the divine feminine, with Mother Earth herself. It's like we're entering her womb, we're entering her sacred space. And I think people have been enchanted with caves for a very long time. And there's got to be some magic to that.
Yeah, because there are some caves that have rare, that have these crystals in them. That's why I would think it would be, medicinal to be in one.
Yeah, and I mean, every cave is made out of rock, and rocks themselves are composed of minute crystals. We might not be able to see it with the naked eye, but there is crystalline structure all around us when we enter into a space like that.
How long did it take you to write your book?
The least amount of time it's ever taken me to write a book has been about 27 days. The longest amount of time was just shy of 2 years. So every one has had its own lifespan. Crystal Basics was about 1.5 years start to finish. And then editorial work and pre-publication work is a whole different timeline. But sitting down to actually write the book, year and a half. Last year, shortly after the start of the pandemic, I sat down to write what will be my next book to come out. And it is my longest book ever, and I wrote it in 9 months. So no rhyme or reason for that. I worked more hours than ever before in spite of the pandemic in my day job. and still manage to do that. So yeah, writing is something I do. I endeavor to do a little bit of every single day, and some days I do a heck of a lot of it. And so I'm grateful that I'm already under contract. I have about 20% of book number 9 done, and books 7 and 8 will be out next year.
But you sound really busy though, because you're running that metaphysical shop, right? And
This
then
is true, yeah.
you do your writing, and then you have your work with the stones and stuff. So you're a busy guy.
I am. I have a lot of different hats that I wear. I work my day job. I don't work quite full-time hours at the moment because of my schedule. I do, publicity and outreach events like this. I teach every single week, mostly online these days, although I have my first in-person event coming up in early November. I'm really excited about that. And then, writing, lots of writing.
Okay, you call yourself a rock hoarder. How many rocks do you think you have at your house?
I don't really know if I could quantify. I mean, some are so tiny. If we were talking poundage, that might be a different story, but a lot of them are neatly tucked away into boxes. But as far as varieties, like mineral species and varietals, gem varietals of species, several thousand. And then, something common like quartz, I have many varieties of quartz. So I don't think it's possible to look at my whole collection all at once. There's no space big enough I could lay it all out in front of me at the same time. It's got to be neatly tucked away and organized, or I have a problem.
There you go. What's next for you?
So my next book is about flower essences, which are like energetic tinctures that are made from the consciousness of plants. Flower essence therapy has been in use for maybe about 90 years or so, started in its modern sense with a British physician, Dr. Edward Bach, who created 38 remedies and has really gone in lots of different directions since his passing. And my next book coming out is called Flower Essences from the Witch's Garden, and it looks at both the therapeutic and the more esoteric, spiritual, and magical properties of flower essences.
Awesome. Well, I thank you for coming on tonight. Oh, I wanted to ask you, where can people get your books?
Anywhere books are sold, I hope. I mean, definitely online retailers, all the big ones you can order there. Please go visit your local bookstore or metaphysical store and ask them if they don't carry it. I'm sure they'd be happy to get it for you and order it. Whether that's my most recent book, Crystal Basics, or any of my others, you can do that. And then if you want to reach out to me personally with questions that are crystal related, you can find me on social media, usually as The Luminous Pearl. My website is www.theluminouspearl, and then I'm at The Luminous Pearl in places like Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook.
All right, Nicholas, thank you so much for coming on. I learned so much about crystals and stuff. My gosh, like I'll never walk into a store again and go, oh yeah, I'll take that, but I want more detail. This is your fault. So thank you so thank you so much for being on the show, and I appreciate it. You have a good weekend and enjoy.
Thank you. You as well.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. That was a fun show. I learned a lot, and I hope you did too. Again, I started off the show on a sad note. We lost Trina Northcutt Priest this afternoon. Longtime member of our team. And let me straighten out. I was kind of funky during that because I love talking about stones and stuff, but my mind kept wandering back to Trina. And yeah. Anyway, guys, next week's going to be kind of cool. It's Halloween week. And so Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're on our usual time, 6:30 p.m. And Monday, we're going to talk about ghosts in Northern California. We'll be in this area talking about ghosts up in the Gold Country and stuff like that. And then Tuesday, my good friend Jason Lindo is going to be on. Jason is from Hawaii, and he has put together a presentation to talk about Hawaiian ghostly legends and stuff. So he's going to be talking about, say, Pele and the night marchers and stuff like that, in Hawaii. Wednesday, our good friend Deborah Franker, man, my mind's like a word right now because of Trina. The lady that was on, Debbie, that was talking, that spoke of Ancient Serial Killers last month, is going to be on with us on Wednesday, and she is going to be talking about ancient ghosts on Wednesday. So we're going to have ancient ghost stories on Wednesday night. So it's going to be ghost all week next week, so you guys can hear about that. In the meantime, I will see you on Monday. It's been great, and if you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you didn't like the show, share it with 5 of your enemies. I'd appreciate it. Also, we have an issue with YouTube. We have 87 subscribers, and we need 100 subscribers to get a dedicated URL. Otherwise, nobody can find us on YouTube. You can try, you can search, you can do whatever you need to do it, but it's not going to happen. I've done it myself. So the best way to do that is to go to our website at www.californiahauntsradio.com, click on the video there, and that'll take you directly into our YouTube site. And you're able to subscribe from there to help us out so we can get that dedicated URL. Anyway, I will see you guys on Monday. And for those of you that are interested in the ghosts of Northern California, I am doing a presentation this weekend on Zoom at Saturday at 5 o'clock. Go ahead and PM me on Facebook if you're interested in going. It's $20 a person. And you're going to get to learn all about, the haunted places that you can actually visit. Not so much ghost hunt, but places that, you can ghost hunt too, but if you're just like the casual ghost hunter, you can go in and visit these places. So it's going to be kind of cool. Different pizza parlors and stuff like that people go to. And we're also going to have evidence to show with that. So you guys will get to see some of the evidence we got in those places. Anyway, I will see you. And again, I'm going to go ahead and run the, let me get back in here. Okay. I'm a little off today. I'm going to go ahead and run this gentleman's books and the website where you can get his books. So there was his website, the Luminous Sphere the Luminous Pearl, I'm here, honest.com, and Crystal Basics, Crystals Karmic Healing. You got Flower Essences from the Witch's Garden, the Art of Reiki. You've got another Reiki Ryoho. And architectural, God, I can't even say that, stones. Crystal Healing Heart and Stones of the Goddess. And like he says, you can get those in bookstores, wherever you need to go. I have it listed as Amazon, but you don't have to go there. You can try Barnes & Noble or wherever it is you feel comfortable buying books. Anyway, again, I will see you on Monday, and yeah, it's been a long week. See you guys later.